the elders of Israel, the Sanhedrin, the High Court of Israel, public leaders of the tribes, in order to bring up the Aron HaKodesh from the city of David, where it's been for several decades perhaps, staying by his father's house, David. David is no longer alive. 7 years after the new kingdom of Shlomo Melech finishes the building of the Beit HaMikdash. Very profound. We learned and mentioned that the area, and the length times width, is 12 times the size of the Mishkan, which explains why we saw Shlomo building 10 tables for showbread, 10 menorot, candelabras, to light in the Mishkan. However, here, there's no 10 Aronot. There's one ark, and that's the ark that Moshe Rabbeinu built. That is the ark that Moshe Rabbeinu built. And since the objective of the Beit HaMikdash is to a place for the abode of the divine presence, the Shekhinah, so we see maybe why the Tanakh, and written by Yirmiyahu, this book is written by Yirmiyahu, why it dedicates or devotes so much time, space for the bringing of the Aron HaKodesh here. And we saw that the Kruvim, the cherubites here, is much different. In addition to the Kruvim on top of the Aron, Shlomo Melech has had built Kruvim that take up the entire width from wall to wall, Mekir Lekir, of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. The last thing we saw is in verse 8, is that the badim, the staves, the poles, connected to or inserted in the rings of the Holy Ark, they stick out. Okay, we saw this by Yericho Abadim, Vayero Rashi Abadim in HaKodesh, Al Pnei Advir, Velo Yera'u Hachutza, Vayusham Ad Hayom Hazeh. We asked ourselves, what symbolic importance could it be that the staves from the Kodesh HaKodeshim are going into the area of the Kodesh and they're sticking out, yet they cannot be seen. What does that mean? That the poles are sticking out beyond the Holy of Holies? They're really into the area of the Kodesh. We said yesterday in a metaphor, as if the bosom of a woman is sticking out because there's a curtain here. That curtain is called the parochet. That parochet is a divider between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. Yet we see that they're sticking out. They're representing the Torah. The Torah has to be spread out. Not only in the Holy of Holies. Torah is not only in the Beit Midrash. When you go on the light rail, or you travel on Eget to go to Kfar Yonah, you take the Torah with you. Our behavior, our speech, how we act and speak. And therefore, it's sticking out to the Kodesh. And therefore, the Tanakh says, Velo Yaru Achutza. The parochet is blocking the appearance of the edges of these poles. Why? Because the Torah is not something, is related to holiness, is related to something intrinsic, internal, it's holy. Okay? We don't take a Sefer Torah and we publicly study it in the middle of the street. We sit in a yeshiva, in a Beit Knesset, a Beit Midrash, and therefore it's still covered up, maybe to represent that the Torah is something pnimi. Torah is not something, we're going to put in a museum on public display and so on. It's to be studied, it's to be used. This brings us to Pasuk Tet, verse 9. And I try to raise a question for you. And where do we see verse 9? Question number 5, Tanakh grammar. Let's read Pasuk 9 and raise a typical grammatical question. What does it say? Ein ba'aron rak shnei luchot ha'avanim. Asher iniach sham Moshe bechorev. Asher karat Adonai im bnei Yisrael b'tzeitam me'eretz Mitzrayim. Here we have a grammatical problem. Ein ba'aron rak. Ein is a negative word. Rak is also a word limiting. Usually, now in mathematics, we say a negative times a negative equals a positive. Okay, minus kaful minus shave plus. Is that what it's coming to teach us? The Malbim, in his commentary, says here that usually when we write the words ein in something, usually we write ein ba'aron ki im. That's usually the way the Tanakh speaks. There's nothing there but this. Not the word rak, but rather that. Now, some of you know or have heard that what is inside this holy ark? Is it only the two Luchot HaBrit, or is it something else? Some of you may have heard that there's a Sefer Torah in the holy ark. Is that Sefer Torah on a shelf outside, as an opinion is stated in the Talmud and Baba Batra? Or is the Sefer Torah inside the ark? Well, there are really two opinions.
Where are the treasury? Where is the treasury of the temple?
Some storage room inside the Beit HaMikdash that we store holy things that are going to be used afterwards. But here, how do we understand it? So, the Torah, there we have one of the principles by which the oral Torah explains the written Torah is if you have a word which is limiting, and then you have another word which is limiting, the Talmud says the following: Ein mi'ut achar mi'ut ela lerabot. English translation, please. Ein mi'ut acharei mi'ut ela lerabot. When you have a word limiting and it's followed by another word limiting, it's telling you there's more than you thought that there is. This will be according to the opinion that inside the holy ark were either the broken tablets, Shivrei Luchot that Moshe Rabbeinu broke, and a Sefer Torah. Again, this is a machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda in the Talmud and Baba Batra on page 14. Everyone, though, does agree, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a jug, not of oil and not of maple syrup, but a jug of man. In the language of Torah, tzinsenet man. Okay. So I think everyone agrees that there was a jug of man that's preserved eternally. Not peanuts, man. Yeah, there's an opinion that says it looks like that. What? Tzinsenet shel man from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a command in the Torah in Parshat Korach, I think, that there has to be man preserved inside the Aron. Just like Mate Aron that blossomed and flowered. So, again, that's according to a midrashic halachic interpretation. According to the pshat, the simple meaning, I'm reading it again, Ein ba'aron rak shnei luchot avanim. Meaning, the simple meaning is that this pasuk will serve as a proof, the Radak says, that the broken tablets and the Sefer Torah was not, I repeat, the simple meaning was not inside the Holy Ark. And that is a Tanaic opinion in Baba Batra, page 14. Okay? Gentlemen, Pasuk Yud, Vayihi b'tzeit konim min hakodesh, v'ha'anan malei et beit Adonai. When you read this Pasuk, you're clearly thinking of a parallel. And what is the parallel? What is this parallel to? What happened historically to the Jewish people?
When Moshe broke the Luchot HaBrit.
No. When Moshe Rabbeinu had the Mishkan completed, when the Mishkan was completed, when the Mishkan was completed, open up to the end of Sefer Shemot. Look to the end of Sefer Shemot, the end of the book of Exodus, the last chapter, the last pasuk. It says in verse 34 of chapter 40, Vayichas Enan et Moed uchvod Adonai malei hamishkan. Look at the similarities. Here, there, all the melacha was finished. Everything was put in its place. A cloud appears on a tent of meeting, and the glory of God fills up the Mishkan. As a result, Moshe Rabbeinu cannot enter. He cannot enter. It's fogged. It's a holy fog. He's a bit fearful. He never experienced this, and he can't go in. What does Hashem do? Moshe. That's the beginning of Chumash Vayikra. God calls out, Moshe, come on in. So here too, but in a different sense. What Kohanim are leaving the Kodesh here by us in Melachim Aleph chapter, in verse 10? What Kohanim are we talking about?
The Kohanim but the Mishkan.
No, we're talking about a Beit HaMikdash. So here we're talking about the Kohanim put the Aron inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We didn't order a moving company. We didn't order a bunch of big, strong guys, 6'4", 250, to pick up the Aron, but only Kohanim can carry the Aron. We said in the name of Chazal 3 times did the Kohanim carry the Holy Ark, once over the Jordan River, the second time surrounding Jericho, and now, no, it was not heavy. In fact, it would be heavy because it's full of gold. However, the Talmud says the Aron carries its carriers. Something metaphysical is related to the Aron. We don't have a rational, pragmatic, down-to-earth explanation because it's supernatural. The Aron carries its carriers. Now,
can I go back for a moment?
Yes.
How does the sentence that En miut, char miut, ela l'sfa,
Ela l'rabot. En miut achar miut ela l'rabot, meaning not only were the Shnei Luchot HaBrit in there, the Shivrei Luchot were there.
It's to addition to the
existence.
The broken.
Not only are the Shnei Luchot Avanim in there, but the Shivrei Luchot, the Sefer Torah was in there according to this opinion. Ein miyut achar miyut ela rabot. Rabot what? In addition to the Luchot Avanim, it's coming to include other things as well. You're welcome. So here in Pasuk Yud, we see a clear parallel that just like the Mishkan of Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Mishkan, the structure was complete, how do we know? According to the engineering plans, that everything was precise and exact. Let's say you're an engineer to build a bridge. You have probably 5,000 bolts and 32,000 screws or whatever. And you get a manual, which is like 1,000 pages, right? When you fix it, you put everything in there, and the first truck goes on the bridge and it doesn't sink. Now you know that everything is okay. How do we know? In a similar way, lahavdil, between lo kadosh and kadosh, how do we know that everything was done perfectly? Here it is. The divine cloud comes down into the Mishkan. What is it showing us? That the work and the materials and the quantity and the heart and the minds, everything was done per command. Everything was done. A result, Anan is filling up the house of Hashem. Didn't Hashem say, when he commanded Moshe Rabbeinu and the nation of Israel to build a Mishkan, in chapter 25, the book of Shemot, V'asu li migdash v'shachanti b'tocham, and you shall make for me a sanctuary, a holy place, and I shall dwell in them. The dwelling is to be in Am Yisrael. what brings about the dwelling, not only the building of the Mishkan, but the Holy Ark. The Ark is the Torah. God is revealed to the Jewish people through we, the carriers of the Torah, performing the mitzvot, living the life of Torah nationally and economically and socially and individually on all levels. That's bringing down God's presence. Okay? We believe right now that the army camp of the Jewish people in the Gaza Strip, that God appears through that army camp of Israel. That's Machon Yisrael. And God is appearing through the bravery, through the courage, through the initiatives of our soldiers and our commanders. And so
this ark. Moses built the original ark.
Moses built 440 plus years ago this ark. It was at Sinai. It was upon order to an architect called Bezalel.
Ten Commandments, or he got the Ten Commandments first, and then he built it before that?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Two opinions. The opinion that appears in the portion of the week that after the sin of the golden calf, God commands Israel to build a Mishkan. But even if we say that, it was still said to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai. So that Mishkan, that tabernacle is built, the Holy Ark is preserved, and now it's brought into the Holy of Holies, and now we see how the Ark is covering. So gentlemen,
They had gold, they robbed, they looted Egypt, so they had metal.
We had gold and silver taken out of Egypt, right? We were commanded by God to take it out. Yeah, I was checking the accounting books the other day, and I found out that they didn't pay us for tens and tens of years our salaries, and we were working overtime. So really, it's coming to us. In fact, we still can litigate the Egyptians today. We should get back more for overtime. We didn't take yet the overtime. Yeah. Well, the truth is, Egypt today is not the Egyptian empire of then. I want to share with you the words of the Malbim, what he says regarding this. Kohanim are coming out of the Kodesh, and the cloud fills up the area. He brought what we just brought as well, that the building of the Mishkan 400 plus years ago, the Torah says the cloud covered the Oel Moed, and the glory of God filled up the Mishkan. That's what we just saw right now here at the end of Shemot. Meaning, the glory, the cloud was covering the tent of meeting above and around it. And the kavod, the glory of God, is what's filling the Mishkan area. Here, he wants to say, in the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, the Anan, the cloud, and the glory of God, okay? We see in the next pasuk, do you see it? The glory of Hashem, okay? Both of them are inside. We're noticing here a difference. I repeat. In the Mishkan, what we learned was that the cloud covered the top of the tent, whereas the glory of God filled up the Mishkan inside. As a result, Moshe couldn't go in. Here, if you see verse 10 and 11, it says the Anan is filling the house of Hashem, and what's also filling? The glory of God, as if these are two different elements. Namely, here in the Holy Temple, both the cloud and the glory are inside. Why is it? Why is the Shekhinah here, both inside, as opposed to the Mishkan of Moshe Rabbeinu? One is inside and one is inside. The answer is very simple. The Mishkan is a temporary dwelling place of God. Not only is it temporary, it's also portable. When God's cloud went up, we packed up everything, folded everything, and we traveled in the desert. 42 travelings did we have traveling in the desert, as is summarized at the end of the book of Bamidbar. That's not the case, one second, sir. That's not the case of the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash is not to be temporary, it's not 40 years. Furthermore, it's not portable. We're not moving it. We're not moving it from one place to the other place. And therefore, the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God, is like on a permanent status. And therefore, both matters are inside. Your question, Chanoch?
Pillar of fire. Was the cloud and the fire the same thing? They just like transform into fire, then transform into cloud, transform into fire, or was it two separate things?
We don't see a fire
Fire
here.
by day.
Where do we don't see.
At night follow them, which is not the cloud.
So one second. We saw on the slowly. You're throwing a lot of questions at the same time. Fire is not mentioned here.
So was it at nighttime?
Let me explain. Fire is not mentioned here. Fire is mentioned at Mount Sinai. The cloud was smoking, and fire was there. Furthermore, after 7 days of not a dry run, but a real run of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, day number 8 came after Moshe Rabbeinu was the acting high priest, 7 days of inaugurating the Mishkan. Came day number 8, Aaron, come here. And he calls his brother and he tells Aaron, who's now the new acting Kohen Gadol, he performs all the sacrificial parts, and fire comes down into the Mishkan. Fire comes down, and that fire stayed lit for all the decades that the Mishkan existed and we traveled with. Okay?
So essentially that's the near Tamid.
So, okay, that was fire there. We're going to get to the korbanot bringing here, and we'll talk here also about fire, but it'll take a few days from now, okay? We'll talk about fire later. B'ezrat Hashem. So there's no mention of fire here yet. What are we about to get to? We're about to get to the speech or the prayer of Shlomo HaMelech. Now, I want to bring to your attention, open up to the parallel section of this in Divrei Ayamim, in the Book of Chronicles. Okay? We know the Book of Chronicles written by Ezra HaSofer, Ezra the scribe, and we open up to chapter 6 of Divrei Ayamim 2. Chapter 6, Perek Vav. Yes. Okay. Divrei Hayamim Bet, Divrei Hayamim 2, Perek 6 at the end, Mamash at the end. Wow, it's my day. This is the page. I can't believe it. Wow, is this it? Okay, 6. Okay. Let's read this chapter of chapter 6. Is telling us exactly what is happening or things that we don't have here. I'm reading from verse 11. Do you see? Vayi b'tzet ha'kohanim min hakodesh, ki kol ha'kohanim nimtzim mitkadashu. All the kohanim had become holy. Ein lishmor lemachlokot. There are no differences. And I'm skipping to verse 13. They're playing music now on this day. Vayi kechad למחצרים ולמשוררים, להשמיע כל אחד. You're right, I'm at the end of chapter 5, I'm sorry. להשמיע כל אחד, להלל, להודות להשם, קרים כל בחצוצות. They're playing of music. And now it says, ולא יכלו, the end of chapter 5, ולא יכלו הכהנים לעמוד לשרת מפני הענן. The Kohanim could not serve in this holy temple because of the cloud. כי מלא כבוד השם את בית אלוקים. This supports what Yirmiyahu wrote here. Both the cloud and the glory of God, this aura, this spiritual atmosphere, is both that and the cloud inside the temple. Okay? This is in the temple. Then we get to the beginning of chapter 6.
How does it support?
Because here it says also.
It says the glory is inside, and you say
Ki malei kvod Hashem et Beit Hashem, and also Ha'anan malei Beit Hashem. Both the Anan and Kvod Hashem are inside the Beit HaMikdash. Unlike the Mishkan that the Anan covered on top and Kvod Hashem was inside. So this is supporting what's stated here.
I thought that the cloud was also in the Mishkan.
No.
Or in the outside and inside. No. Only outside?
No. Ken. Kvod Hashem malei et Mishkan, but it says Vayichas ha'anan et Or HaMoed. It covered the Or HaMoed on top. Now, here at the end of chapter 6, amidst the tefillah we have here of Shlomo Amelech. Let's examine the last two verses here. He has a very long tefillah. You see, he goes into Psukim 30, 40, a tefillah that we're going to be learning tomorrow, the next days as well. And now in verse 41, Ve'ata, and now, this is the end of his tefillah. Do you see a break between verse 41 and verse 40? There's a break. There's a place. Do you see that? Okay. Ve'ata, and now, Kuma Hashem Elokim. He's asking Hashem, arise. Hashem Elokim lenuchecha. Arise to your resting place. Something's not working out. He's asking, Hashem, get up to your resting place. Ata va'aron uzecha. You and the ark of your might. We see that term also in Tehillim. The Aron is called the Oz, the strength. Okay? We said it today when we brought the Sefer Torah back into the holy into the Aron HaKodesh. What does it say? Bavur David Kilaka. What does it say? Kuma Hashem lemnuchatecha ata ve'aron uzecha. Here, it's almost a similar pasuk. David wrote almost the same pasuk. The ark is called the ark of your strength. What is David asking for? Shlomo, what is he asking for? Kohanecha Hashem Elokim yilbeshu tshuah. May the Kohanim, okay, may they be clothed in salvation. V'chasidecha, and your saints, yismechu batov. He's asking for something. Something's not working out. Next, Hashem Elokim, the last pasuk of this chapter, of this speech, of this prayer. Al tashei penei mishichecha. Don't turn back. The request of your anointed one. Who is your anointed one? Zachra, remember. He's asking Hashem, remember lechazdei David avdecha. Remember the righteousness of your servant David. What's going on here?
You're asking for zchut avot. You're asking for...
Gentlemen, something's not working out, that he's asking for these things.
The Kohanim can't do their job.
Okay, let's bring our attention to a famous Gemara in letter Hey, from the Gemara Masechet Shabbat Daf Lamed, side 1. I'll read it in Hebrew and in English. Do you remember the Mizmor that King David wrote? I think, what is it? Which it's 24. We also recite it when we bring back the Sefer Torah into the Ark. Okay, Psalms chapter 24, where it talks about lift up the gates and let the openings of the world go in, and so on and so forth. Let me read it. Kshabanash Shlomo. So the Gemara is going to teach us about an ongoing dispute between David's house and their opponents. I want to be makdama. Some of you know that ever since David became king, he had opponents. There were people that didn't recognize him as king. His grandmother, his Gior, is not really a good Gior. And then later David had an episode with this woman called Bathsheba. The first child of Bathsheba died. The second child becomes Yedidiah, known as Shlomo. God tells Nathan the prophet, he is the one that's going to build. But there are still people bad-mouthing David. People, and as a result, they were not accepting even Shlomo. So if you think life is easy, look at the life that David had and even Shlomo had. With this knowledge that there's always been a dispute about David's house, his children, let's read the following Gemara. Talmud Bavli Mesechet Shabbat Daf Lamed Amud Aleph. I'm looking. Please follow if you can follow the Hebrew. Kshabana Shlomo Beit HaMikdash, when he built the temple, Bikesh Lachnis Aron Levei Kodesh Kodeshim. He made a request to put the Aron into the Kodesh Kodeshim. Now we explained yesterday and the day before. Shlomo. He wants to put everything's done, everything's in its place. The last thing to be done that's going to bring down the glory of God is the Holy Ark inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Now we explained a physical problem of the material world, that the expanse of the wings of the Kruvim was the entire width of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. How many amot did we say? 20 amot, which is about 10 meters. Okay? How do you put kruvim inside that it has the width of 10 meters if the actual room is 10 meters?
Like 30 feet.
Huge. That's what we learned. You're absolutely right. That's right, sir. Gigantic. 10 meters is, yeah. Now, what did we answer the name of our sages? Ein ha'aron min aminyan. Min amidah. The aron doesn't take up space. Something metaphysical. Something metaphysical. With that in knowledge, let's read this famous Gemara that's going to share a major problem. He wanted to put the aron in the Kodesh Kodeshim. What happened? Dafku sharim zebazeh. The gates to bring the Holy Ark into the Beit HaMikdash were like glued one to another. They didn't open up. He's trying to put the Holy Ark into Kodesh, and there are gates that don't want to open up. Armar Shalom v'arba'a rinanot v'lo nana. Inside this chapter, and in our chapter, the parallel, we find 24 different languages of tefillah. Shlomo used all of them. Every type of word that's praying and praising Hashem, everything written in the book, he tried it. And he thought maybe by praying this way, the gates will open up. Something's not spooky, but something metaphysical is happening here. The gates are not opening up. Patach, then he said, I have another idea. I'm going to use my father's psalm regarding the openings of the world. Se'u sharim rashechem. Lift up your gates, the tops of your gates. Vinasu pitchei olam, and let the openings of the world be raised up. V'yavo melech hakavod. And may allow who to come? The glorious king. Wow, what happened? The doors, the gates that didn't want to open up, thought that Shlomo was calling himself the King of Glory. Rahatu batrei lemivla'e. The gates, allegorically, I'm adding, started running after Shlomo to swallow him up. What is he considering himself the what? Melech HaKavod? What's going on here? That's what the gates understood. Amru, they said, the gates asked Shlomo Melech, Mi ze Melech HaKavod? Who is the glorious king? Shlomo answers, Amarlu, Hashem. Izuz v'gibor. God is the what? The mighty and courageous king. Now Shlomo tries something else. Chazar v'amar, he repeated again. Se'u sharim rashechem. Lift up your gates, the tops of your gates. Use'u, and lift up pitchei olam, the openings of the world. V'yavo melech hakavod. He continues to quote his father, David. Mihu ze melech hakavod? King David asks rhetorically in this psalm. Hashem tzivaot, the God of hosts. Who melech hakavod sela? Velo nana. He's still not answered. The gates do not open. Wow. Would you call a carpenter now? I mean, who do you call? Who helps open up the gates? Kevan Shamar. And now, since he says, and that's the last two psukim of the Tefillah of Shlomo Melech that appears in Divrei Yamin, what doesn't appear in Sefer Melachim. Hashem Elokim. Al tashay pnei mishichacha. Don't, as we say here, don't what? Deny. Okay? Where is it? Don't turn back the request of your anointed. Al tashay pnei mishichacha. Zachra, remember the kindness of David Avdecha. What's going on? Why is that, quote unquote, the capital THE solution for the opening of the gates and putting in the Holy Ark in? When he says, please don't let down my father, the anointed king. Remember the kindnesses that David do. Immediately he's answered. Immediately he's answered. Meaning the gates open, the Kohanim bring inside the what? The Holy Ark into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and then Bo'tasha, Nefchu Pnei Kol Sonei David Kishulei Kedera. The Talmud says, at that moment, all the opponents of King David, and now Solomon as well, their face turns like the bottom of a burnt pot. Ken, did your mother ever ask you to please clean out the pot of a burnt pot and you got to scrub it? That's how the faces of the opponents look. They look terrible. Why? V'yadu kol ha'am v'chol Yisrael shemachalo HaKadosh Baruch Hu al oto avon. Once Shlomo HaMelech is enabled to bring the Aron HaKodesh into the Holy Ark, something unusual happens. The opponents retire. They hang up their uniform. We're no longer opponents of David and his household. And now we know that whatever sin he had vis-a-vis the woman called Bathsheba, here is proof that the fact that he's able to bring the Holy Ark into the Beit HaMikdash, that God has pardoned Shlomo Melech. This very unusual Gemara requires a lot of explanation. There's a special piece of Rav Kook in his Sefer Olatria. Maybe we'll touch upon it tomorrow and give further insight how the enemies of Shlomo now are no longer opponents and why everything now is going well. We'll continue tomorrow.
Questions?